Morning, guys. Sorry for missing last week, but I don't think you were complaining too much. And I was kind of a little bit optimistic of what I could do this weekend. But until this morning, basically every morning, woke up with horrible headaches and stuff. The combination of flu and sinus infection. This morning, I feel a little bit half human. I mean, yesterday, I know I lectured, but I don't know how I finished two lectures. At least I had 1 hour between them. But today, back to back, shouldn't be that much of a problem. Short story, there's not going to be any quiz this week. What I'm going to do today, I'm going to basically do the lectures that we were going to do last Tuesday. We'll talk about chapter six, and not six, I'm sorry. I'm thinking about my other class, chapter 10. And we'll play Jeopardy on chapter 10 on Thursday. And this weekend, we'll go to regular. I'll have the lecture videos or problem videos and the quizzes for chapter 11. And, next Tuesday, we'll have our discussion and Jeopardy again. That takes us to spring break anyway. I kind of wanted to do it that way so that we could do stocks and stuff after the spring break. All right. Now, kind of let's briefly talk about what a bond is. Come on. Bond is actually a securitized contract between a borrower, that we shall call issuer, and a set of lenders. And those lenders do not have to be known by name. By securitized, we mean the entire loan is divided into smaller denominations. So we call them a bond. So typically $1,000 face value. But it's a contract. Just like when you go to your bank and borrow money, either just so-called signature loans, there's no security attached to it, or a car loan where your car is used as a security for that loan, or a mortgage, the house that you bought is used as a security. It has a lot of things. You actually sign a long thing. I don't know if you guys ever bought a car that way. I mean, by the time you get to drive the car, you almost always have carpal tunnel syndrome. They make you sign so many stuff. Of course, you don't ever read them, but it's all there. The conditions. At a minimum, what's the size of the loan? Uh, if there are denominations, what are the denominations? What are the payment terms? How frequently you're going to make payments? And what is the maturity date of this loan? Are there things you may or may not be able to do? For example, if you finance a car with a car loan, they're not going to allow you not to have insurance. Okay? Why? Because it's their security. If something happens to that car, some of that insurance payments is going to go back to the lender. That's one of the reasons insurance companies ask you, is there any lien on this car? Because in case the car is totaled, they know that they're going to make the first payment to the lien holder. And if there's anything left, then you're going to get it. It's basically a contract. You may not be able to, for example, I know I'm a safe driver, so I'd like to have the highest possible deductible on my car insurance. But if you have a loan on that, I mean, right now I do 2,500 deductible. But if I had a loan on that car, I could not do more than 1,000. I mean, they basically say, okay, this is a depreciating asset to begin with. So if something happens and car gets totaled, you have to, they're gonna pay me 2,500 less than whatever the value of the car was before the accident. What if you don't have that money and don't pay me back? So they want to get themselves protected. I mean, the contract, I mean, this is just a term, but it's called an indenture. And typically with bonds, in addition to defining terms, you know, what's the maturity, what's the total amount borrowed, what's the face value, denominations, are there any intermediate payments like coupon payments? If there are, how many are they? How many are they and how much are they? And what are you going to pay me in the maturity? There are other conditions that could be put in, and these are typically called covenants. I know it sounds like a fancy term. These are promises that you make as the borrower. There are typically two types of covenants. One is called protective covenants. These are things, the purpose of which is to protect the lenders. For example, I go ahead and borrow $1 billion from you guys. Then, you know, next year I decide that I'm going to borrow $10 billion more. Okay. Well, if that happens, you're increasing the chances that you're going to be uh, financially insolvent at some point. So you're affecting me. And, but sometimes this could say, you know, that equity ratio shall be higher than a set amount. There are also something called negative covenants. These are also protective in nature, but it designates things that company cannot do. So lenders shall not borrow more money that is senior to this issue, for example. Whenever you issue bonds, you can always designate the seniority. You could say, okay, I'm borrowing from you guys, but I'm going to designate you junior. That means if and when I go into bankruptcy, the senior guys are going to be paid first. If there is anything left, then you'll be paid. Of course, you know, that'll always have a cost. If I'm one of the junior guys, I'm going to demand more return for that. And you may also have call provisions. A lot of corporate bonds, especially, are callable, which means at some point in the future, company can decide, okay, I'm going to pay you guys a set amount. Uh, there's a call price. Company pays the call price and retire the bonds early. Let's say I'm somewhat of a startup company. I borrowed money. Of course, as a startup company, my bond probably is not rated that well. So let's say I'm a junk bond. So I'm going to pay something like treasuries plus 3. Okay. But it's a 10-year bond. In 2 years, my company became successful. Suddenly, if I issued a new bond, it's not going to be rated junk. It's going to be maybe rated investment grade. The lowest investment grade bonds these days yield about treasuries plus 1. So if I retire these bonds early, and all I have to do is issue a new bond, but I pay less interest, and I retire these guys early. Of course, these guys don't want that because they got into this bond thinking we're going to have a bond that's going to pay us treasuries plus 3. And suddenly you're telling me if you want to take my company's risk, you're going to have to accept treasuries plus 1. In many cases, that call price is way above the face value. In a regular bond, at maturity, you pay the face value, and the difference between the two is actually called the call premium. So I'm telling you, I may retire early, but if I retire early, I'm going to give you something for it. But for this reason, we should expect callable bonds to have higher yields because that call provision has a value for the firm. If it's valuable for the firm, that means it is value reducing potentially for the lenders. So they're going to want to be compensated for that. In many cases, there's a call protected period, typically a year, but it could vary across firms and issues. I'm basically saying, okay, this is a 10-year bond. It is callable, but I may not use that right in the first year or first 2 years or so. That's the call protected period. At least you're going to get that promised yield uh, during the call protected period. After that, all bets are off. And that call provision becomes valuable, A, when the company uh, is a better investment risk and the overall interest rates are coming down.